Ilu ilu hotzianu mimitzrayim hotzianu mimitzrayim dai.
Shalom, it is good to be back with all of you today on Talking Torah. Passover is approaching and I have some insights, thoughts, teachings, a lot that I hope is going to help you to make the Seder experience something really special this year, something that will be memorable, something that will be educational, something that I hope will inspire the people who are gathered with you and who will learn from what you will be able to offer them when we sit down and when you sit down at the Seder. You know, the Seder is filled with ritual and ceremonies, more than anything else that we do throughout the entire year in our homes. In fact, if you think about it, it is the longest running ritual ceremony that we have as Jews. It goes back over 3,000 years, and yes, it's changed. There have been additions to, subtractions from, but essentially 3,000 years ago, and more actually than that, for the very first Seder, Moses told the people, gather as families and tell the story. Tell the story of freedom. Tell the story of our redemption, of our liberation from the land of Egypt. So we have times when we recline. There are times when we lift the glass, put down the glass, drink from the glass. There are times when we cover the matzah, uncover the matzah. We open the door, we close the door, we eat this, we eat that. All of these rituals, they've been part of the experience of the Seder for thousands of years already. And each has its own meaning. Each has its own place and its own message. The important thing for us to realize is that when we're at the Seder, what we want, what we hope is that we can take this story and we can somehow help the people around us and ourselves to make it our story. Because that's the only way this lives. We've got to feel from generation to generation that it is our story. It's not just history. History is something you study. Memory is what you carry because it's yours. It's part of your identity. And this story is our identity. So I'd like to share with you some thoughts and some of my own thoughts about how you can maybe enliven the discussion around the Seder table, some things that you can bring to the people who are there with you that might help them to understand the Seder a little bit better. You know, early on in the Seder, what we do is, you know, we break the matzah. We break the matzah and we take the larger portion of the matzah, which will become the afikomen, and we hide it. Now that's there to jolt us into the reality that this is about reliving the poverty of our ancestors. When you're a slave, you are impoverished. And that's what our ancestors experienced. So when we take that matzah, for those moments, that's all we have, that little piece of matzah. That's it. And for the slave, that was it. One of our rabbis, the Seforno, slightly referred to something that we'll understand. He called matzah the fast food. And although we associate fast food with other foods, it was the fast food. Because it was the food that you could make in just under 18 minutes. It was the food that would sustain you when you had to leave Egypt quickly. And if you were a slave, it was the food that would carry you throughout your days. Now, when we break that matzah and we hold it up, what we are saying is, this takes us back to that time. And then we say, halachma anya. This is the poor bread that our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. This is the poor bread. Then we come to the 4 questions. Now I want you to understand, if you go anywhere in the Middle East, there's no monument that you'll find that talks about the liberation of the Israelites from Egypt. Today in America, we always expected there'll be monuments to all kinds of events in Europe, any place. But there was no monument to the going forth out of Egypt. You know why there was no monument? Because Moses was wise enough to understand that more important than a monument is to turn this story over to our children. And that's why, as the Seder is beginning, they get the spotlight. Because what is so important for us, for parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, relatives and friends, is to see children asking those questions which reflect that the story is in the process of becoming their story, part of their memory. So Moses said, don't build a monument. Don't build a monument to the going forth out of Egypt. Give it to the children. From generation to generation to generation, give it to them. Let them have that story. And how do you start the story? You start the story by the questions that are asked. Now, I know we're accustomed to the thought, and it is the tradition in the Haggadah, that there are 4 questions. But you know what our rabbi said? You don't need to ask 4 questions, although we should do it. We should. Any question that indicates that the child sees that something different is happening that night, that's the question. You want your children to notice that something different is going on in the house, that something meaningful is happening in a way that doesn't happen other nights. So let them ask questions. In fact, at our Seder, I go out a few days before and I buy all kinds of gifts for the kids, and I say to them, if you ask a good question, not just the 4 questions, ask me any good question and you get a prize, you get a toy. And of course, if they answer a question that I ask, or that any of the other adults ask at the Seder, they also get a prize. I want them to feel that excitement, that thrill of learning about their history, their story, and making it their memory. Now I want to conclude today, and we're going to come back and continue to teach about the Haggadah in a few days. We all know about the 4 sons. And there's one that we call the Rasha, the evil son, the wicked son, the rebellious son. And I've tried to understand over the years what it is that makes this young person rebellious. And then I read a commentary. And the commentary opened my eyes to something I had never really understood before. What is it that this son asks? He asks, Ma ha'avodah hazot lachem. What is all this avodah, this work, meant for you? What does it mean for you? So what's so wrong with that question? And here's the interpretation that I came to read. The word avodah means work. Work. Just like, as this commentator said, if you look at the book of Exodus, what our ancestors did in Egypt was avodah. Their slavery was avodah, same word. Their slavery was hard work with no meaning, just doing the work that they were forced to do. And so when this child asks the question, Ma ha'avodah hazot lachem, what is this work? This child is looking at all the work that goes on to prepare the home for the Passover, all the work of the Seder, and sees it as being essentially without significance. It's no more significant in his or her eyes from the work of the slave, our ancestor, the slave in Egypt. It's just avodah. It's work without purpose, work without meaning. And that's what's wrong with the question that the evil or the wicked child asks. Because he or she doesn't understand that all of this is designed to create the most incredible religious experience celebrated in any home, anywhere. This is the experience that has helped to make our people and keep the identity of our people. So yes, it is a lot of work, and it takes a long time to get through the Seder if you do it right. But it's avodah with meaning. It's avodah with a message. It's avodah that has significance because it allows us to share the story with the next generation, and it allows us to continue to feel inspired by the story as we tell it every year. So I wish you a wonderful Seder. I'm going to try in another session to give you some other thoughts that you can carry into your Seder experience. I want to remind you that on Wednesday evening here at the Merrick Jewish Center, we've invited Noam Zion to be our guest scholar. Noam Zion is the editor of this wonderful Haggadah called A Different Night, which is really a fabulous, fabulous Haggadah that should be in every home, I believe. Noam is a senior fellow at an institute in Jerusalem called the Shalom Hartman Institute, one of the finest places of Jewish study in the world today. I'm delighted that he'll be here. I hope that you will join him and many, many others, because his topic is going to be making an amazing or creating an amazing Seder. You can do that. You can create an amazing Seder. Let Noam help you. I'll help you. I'm sure Rabbi Tillis will help you when he joins me next week in the next Talking Torah. So shalom.
Ilu ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, dayenu, 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 dayenu.